Alrighty, guys, our guest here tonight is author Isabelle Markus, here to tell us all about her premiere novel, The Awakening of Marcianna. Isabelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, I think we should address the elephant in the room, which
What?
is, I mean, it is what it is, because Isabelle here is writing her books with a pseudonym. And so a big part of her marketing is kind of about doing fun filters. And I don't know if that was intentional or if it was accidental, but I think we should start off right off the bat of asking, what's it like trying to market your amazing book with a pseudonym?
It's challenging to try to find a different filters that will mask my identity enough for my own comfort. But you know what? One of my friends' husband actually stumbled upon my TikTok, and he said he recognized me anyways with because of my voice. So there's really no point really in the filters, but I'm still doing it anyways, just in case somebody else that isn't as familiar with my voice stumbles upon my TikTok from work.
So for our listeners, you may want to pop on over to our YouTube channel to see exactly what Isabelle's wearing, but she's got these amazing 3D glasses going on. And I'd say I'm quite jealous, but I could easily just put on a filter, and I might. So go on over to YouTube and watch to see the shenanigans. You'll probably know by us laughing. So
right. I wish they had like more glamorous, filters like TikTok on Zoom, but 3D glasses do the trick.
So for the Zoom people who are listening, we're requesting more glamour, although I'm really a big fan of whatever one I just did because it's amazing. It just goes with my cat stuff. And is it like a lion, would you say?
I think it's a lion.
I think
it's a lion.
So, Isabelle, tell us about your book, The Awakening of Marcianna.
Well, The Awakening of Marcianna, I've been saying, is a cross between contemporary fiction and women's fiction. And it is about a mom who is also a wife and a pediatrician. She has a stressful life trying to balance, kids' activities, her work, all these different obligations. And then all of a sudden, all this weird stuff starts happening to her. She's getting these premonitions, these dreams. Somebody is following her. And she starts having these supernatural abilities, and she realizes she's actually a dormant supernatural creature that's awakening and needs to protect the destiny of humankind. And so the whole book, it kind of centers around how these realizations also are impacting all her relationships. So she has these really close girlfriends that she's always hanging out with. They've known each other for like 2 decades. And so she's confiding in them as much as she can. I think they all think, it's fun and crazy. And then there's the aspect of her husband and how, to balance or, telling him the truth without freaking him out, or how much she can tell him and confide in him, especially when she doesn't even really know what's happening. So it's really unique in that respect because I think in a lot of the similar chosen one genres, it's a person that is much younger than a 40-year-old mom with kids. Definitely there's no kids involved typically. And the main character really doesn't have any other obligations besides just saving the world. And here you've got all these other obligations and things that we're all going through that are coming into the mix. And at the same time, she's got to figure out what she has to do and how to go about doing it.
I connected so much with Marcianna because, I'm getting closer towards that age group. I have a serious relationship and, cat child, and couldn't imagine being in that situation where, holy crap, the world's kind of depending on me and has depended on me, and what do I do? And I loved the first few chapters where you really brought us into her world and how busy she was and how many demands she had on her even before anything supernatural started to occur. And you touched on this a little bit about how it's kind of unique for these types of books to have older characters. And was there a reason behind why you chose to go with an older character?
I think because I was really, I started writing the character kind of in scenarios that I related to. I really wanted to have a character that, a mom, especially a working mom, can really relate to, but really any type of mom. Or just, a woman, a modern woman in this day and age, that's in their 40s and has all these different obligations. And I think that, there are different genres that, are there, touch upon, women that are of more mature age that are having, magical things occurring to them or supernatural things occurring to them. But many times, in these stories, they don't really, like I said before, have a lot of other things going on, and so, they may not have like the relationships or the children that are as young as Marcy has. And I think that's one of the unique aspects is in some of the books that I've read where the individual is like in their 40s and then coming into magic. Typically the kids are older and kind of out of the picture, more like friends. While these are very much dependent, children.
Yeah, they're very young children.
Yes. The oldest one is 11. The youngest one is 3. And I recently was interacting with somebody that was talking about, I think there was something on TikTok where they were saying that how come nobody ever shows like biological functions in books, like going to the bathroom and things like that. And I
saw that. Yeah.
I wrote as a joke, I'm like, well, actually there's a whole scene in my book where, she's on the toilet and her kid barges because I think, how many people, whether they be, human children mamas or animal mamas, how many people can relate to, somebody just barging in on them while they're having their moment.
Every time they find you.
Yeah, and I felt that it was a scene where one of my earlier alpha readers said, "Ooh, that's kind of like gross."
I loved that scene. I was like, I identified with that so hard.
And she was like, maybe you should cut that. And I was like, no, I'm like, I feel this is the essence of, who she is in that. What does it speak to her life that is going to, the bathroom? That's where she has the most time to think, is sitting on the toilet. And even then people are, disrupting her. So some of the feedback that I have actually received from my beta readers and now my ARC readers is that, similar to what you said, that she's very relatable, that they can completely picture themselves in her life. And there was one scene that one of my readers actually reached out and she said, I absolutely love the minivan scene. I don't know if you remember, Sarah, where she freaked out over all the fighting going on in the back of the minivan. She's like, that's me.
I think anyone bringing up a child has had that moment where, they've got something else going on in their life. They're trying to think about that, but the kids are in the back screaming or whatever it is. And they just have that little moment of, crap, should I have done that? But, we have all go through that at some point in our parenthood journey.
Yeah, and I think that's, after she, has a snap of temper or whatnot, then you see kind of the mommy guilt that immediately comes on, which I think is very familiar to a lot of moms, where we never feel perfect enough.
And that's your characters, all of them are so relatable and in so many different ways. And there were several scenes that take place at coffee shops. And I loved those scenes because I had a coffee shop that I used to go to with my best friend all the time. I can't tell you how many of our world problems we solved at that little coffee shop. And it was always so special. And I think that some of the most important conversations in the story happen at the coffee shops. And in particular with Marcy and her two friends, Farah and Cece. And they are such good friends. And I was wondering as I was reading through, how different might this story have been if they didn't believe her or they thought that she was just going crazy?
Right. And I think that when I wrote those characters, and even when I wrote Marcy, and going back to your original question, why at this age, I was kind of putting myself into Marcy's shoes, and also bringing certain elements of my own friends into Farah and Cece, and kind of how they react. You have Cece, who's very sarcastic, and she handles everything with humor, like very dry humor. But she's also very logical, and she is kind of pushing back against it, but is humoring the situation. And then there's Farah, who's very much like, I am so into all this mystical stuff. I love, reincarnation and dreams and all this stuff. And this is just like her life. And so for her, this is my moment to shine.
She'd been training her whole life for this.
She'd been training her whole life for this. But at the same time, as it starts out with these like kind of silly things that are happening, things that are fun, that, I've had these deja vu things that have happened to me, and I've shared with my friends, and we've laughed about it and talked about it as if it's, something cosmic or whatnot. But you think, for the most part, it's just like fun talk, right? You're being silly. You kind of, believe it, kind of not. But then as it progresses and it gets crazier, more dangerous, that's when you kind of see even Farah they're all in with Marcy, but even she's kind of like, you got to give me a moment because this is getting like really bad. But I think that the fact that Marcy is as sane as she is going through this whole thing is because she has this wonderful support system in her friends.
And yeah, I wanted to kind of touch back on what you said about how you put a lot of your friends into Marcy's friends. And have you had those special moments at a particular cafe, or is there any sort of special place for you where you go to meet your crew to work out your life problems?
So we actually meet at this little vineyard for brunch, and we try to do it monthly. We really stink at planning. So half the time we don't get there. But we do that is our go-to spot. Now, the world's kind of very virtual right now, so that's where we are. Before, we actually work in a similar location, and so the opportunities to like pop out for lunch were more available to us than now. But yes, now we try to do the monthly vineyard brunch.
How fun.
But they all think they see themselves. They think that each character is them. And I'm like, it's actually a hodgepodge of so many people, including my own self, those friends.
They're like, I claim this one. And
pretty much.
How funny. I identified the most with Farah because I feel like I would be that friend of like, no, I've got this. Like, we can figure this out. Let me consult my astrology books. What do you mean you didn't read it? Yeah, that I was like, this feels like me. This is my character. So, listeners, it's a really fun book, and I highly recommend checking it out. And Isabelle, let's talk about Marcy's drink or beverage that we have chosen tonight. And I think both of us are sampling different ones from this selection.
Right. So, as Sarah mentioned, that a lot of the chit chat between friends happens at the coffee shop. So they all have their signature beverages. Marcy likes to drink cafe au laits. Farah does, I believe, the cappuccinos. And Cece, of course, being the very dry, cynical one, is doing just black coffee. But whenever they have, a fun night at Marcy's house or one of the friend's house, they make macchiatos with chocolate sauce. And so we were naming the drink the Marcy Macchiato. But when things get really tense, they do pull out their wines as their go-to to really chill a little bit down, though Farah there at one point was requesting whiskeys.
I can't blame her in that scene. I would have gone for it too. Just straight out of the wine bottle at that point. Well, so that's a really fun story. And listeners, as you can tell, there's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot of human connections between the faults of the characters, between the crazy things that they have to go through that we go through in our day-to-day lives. So there's extremely relatable characters and a wonderful, wonderful, rich story. And Isabelle and I have been connecting over the last many months through a fun little marketing group that we're a part of. And Isabelle led the way and into this brave new world of TikTok, which I know has been around for a while, but we're figuring it out. So Isabelle, you had a video of your cat assistant walking across or you caught her shortly after the act. And,
yes.
Just having heard your story about your character's life being kind of crazy and unpredictable, you want to talk about some of the unpredictable things that happen in your world that have affect your storytelling abilities?
Yes, in terms of the video you're talking about, I was just about to send my book to the proofreader and had everything set, and I stepped away for a moment, got caught up in something, and my son calls to me that he's like, your computer's making really like weird sounds. And he's like, obviously in the other room, like not investigating whatsoever. And I walk over there and there's my cat, Daisy, basically just sitting with her butt on my keyboard. And it's just making all these weird sounds. All these weird fonted characters are coming up everywhere. And when I shoo her off, I look to see in my Scrivener, which is this software for writing, where you can organize your writing. She had made a folder and many, many subfolders within a chapter of mine. In addition to this, she did record herself. I didn't even know I had a recording system on my computer, but there you go. I think she used like Google or something to record herself doing this act of of traumatizing my book. And so the TikTok that I took was of her leaving my computer and me finding out about all these folders. And I was just like, well, what else did she do? Like I had to go through with a fine-tooth comb looking to see before I sent it off to the proofreader and realized there was chapters jumbled or things deleted.
She's like, no, Mom, like this. This is how the book should be.
My yes. I like how she recorded her crime. There's audio available.
That's just the spite of cats. Like, I'm going to do this to you and you will know about it. That's what they do. They don't try to hide their crimes like dogs. They're very upfront about it.
Yes.
So kind of going to the bigger question there, though, how are you finding, or what's sort of your balance like of balancing life and writing? And the reason I ask is because this comes up a lot for all of us. It's such an interesting double world we live in of trying to figure this out. So I'm curious what that looks like for you.
Yes, it looks painful. I do have a rather involved job. It's rather stressful at times. I manage a large group of people and have a lot of responsibility. And at the same time, my husband also has a rather stressful job. And we have 3 kids, and all 3 kids have a ton of activities. They all have to play multiple sports. And so it's kind of like I'm part-time chauffeur, trying to do my job. So a lot of time when I'm writing, it's, the sneak away moments, like everybody leaves and goes to sleep, and that's when I start. Or I try really hard. I'm really not a morning person, but I try hard to wake up early and write, send the kids off to school. I actually am fortunate that I'm able to now in these past 2 years to be able to go virtual. And so I don't have that commute. So I spend the time that I would have had commuting to work on writing. So that's nice. But yeah, lots of nights and weekends. And that's why I dedicated part of my book to my family, who really kindly puts up with all of this and really supports me through it. And it's really cute because my kids actually really got recently into writing as well, because they see me writing all the time. So they're all, making up stories and writing books as well. And so it's really cute and sweet. And I like that.
I love that. You're inspiring the next generation. Oh my God. Well, that's awesome. And that is so beautiful that you have the love and support of your family, and that you're seeing that so actively through your children who want to be like mom and write as well. Oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, my daughter, actually, my middle child, she is like the most artsy of the 3. And she sings, she dances, she acts. And so she's been the most involved in writing stories. And she told me she started this story. She was almost done with it. And then she comes up the next day and she's like, Mom, I don't know why, but I'm not yet done with my actual first book, but I've already started my second book. And I'm like, oh, look at you. You're a writer, a true one.
He sure is. That's like, right. You don't finish the first one. You go on to the next. Yeah.
She's like, I had this great idea. I needed to start putting it down. I'm like, it doesn't have to be linear at this point. You can come in and, fill it.
That's awesome. See, that's where a Scrivener comes in handy, because you can just drag and drop things, move the chapters around.
Yes, she is old school right now with a notebook and pen. So no Scrivener for her. That's how I
do. Well, that's fantastic. And I'd love to know what can we expect next?
Well, the Awakening of Marcianna is actually a duology or duology. How do you say that, Sarah? Is it duology? Duology? Both?
I think it depends on which coast you're from.
This is why I never say it out loud. I just spell it. And so I'm working on the second half. I'm more than, I'm like a little bit halfway into it, a little bit over halfway, depends how you look at it. But I know exactly how it ends, so maybe even more than halfway. And so that's what I've been working a lot on, though I had to take this big chunk of break because this is my first book, and I had to really learn about all the ins and outs of being an indie author and putting out your own book and learning, Amazon and Ingram Sparks. And I decided that I was going to go wide. So I had to make accounts in Barnes and Nobles and Google Play and Kobo. So there was this moment of, I want to say a good 2 months where I was focusing almost all my energy on the business side of things. So now I'm really excited. September 9th, book comes out. And so I will be 100% of my time, of my free time. I'm doing air quotes for the ones that aren't watching us. Um, where I'm going to be able to be writing and hopefully finish up soon, because that was the one thing that all my ARC readers recently said. As soon as they finished the book, they're like, "Can I have the next part?"
I want to know what happens next. Yeah.
Give me half of the next part.
Get the feedback early and then
Well, it's actually nice. Two of my ARC readers actually became so involved in the storyline that I did ask them if they would be beta readers for me and just give me that feedback early on, since they had really strong feelings about the book. So I thought it'd be good to have people like that on my team, to be able to get that feedback.
I always recommend exactly that, finding beta readers that you can really trust and that will be able to have that open relationship with you, where they can give you both praise where praise is needed, but also, hey, maybe here, let's tweak this a little bit, or be open to this. And there's always a balance between too much feedback and not enough, but when you find that sweet spot, definitely try to keep those beta readers, because they make a huge difference. And along those lines, do you have any tips or hints or anything for those looking to go indie and not sure where to start?
Well, I think definitely making connections with other indie authors. It is invaluable. I think one of the best things I did was I joined this Facebook group. It was called the Writing Gals. And when first I was getting like the lay of the land. There's other Facebook groups I also joined, but in this particular group, I said, at the time, I thought I was writing urban fantasy. More on that later. But I said, I'm writing urban fantasy, paranormal fiction. Is anybody out there in this group writing the same? And would you be willing to be like writing partners with me? And that is how I met Teresa, who's our mutual friend. And she was invaluable in the amount of feedback she provided to me. And really, my writing grew so much just interacting with her. And there was a few other individuals that were in this group that really helped me kind of find my voice. And so, yes, and then the other tip that I said more about that is that I wrote the book. I wrote the book how I felt I should write the book. And then I did, when I was interviewing editors, one of the editors said, well, this is urban fantasy, right? So that whole beginning part, you really just need to cut it. It's too much mommy, and just dive right into that action. And I was like, oh, I'm like, that's not really my vision. So I ended up going with an editor that kind of allowed me to supported my vision. She got exactly where I was coming from. So the editing was kind of, not trying to change this piece. But then when I got to the beta reading part, again, brand new author, I had no beta readers. I was just kind of like reaching out into the ether, and I was advertising it as urban fantasy. And so I got people that were, they were avid urban fantasy readers. And one of them also said like, oh, what's all this learning about her life and friends and stuff. And kind of wanting to get into the meat of the action, like right away. And so I was like, ooh, I really should change. I started to think like, okay, that's like two people that have told me that this should change and I need to change this. But luckily before I did, I queried the rest of my beta readers as they were giving me back feedback. And I'm like, I was just wondering, what do you think about if I were to remove this section or like trim it a lot? And all of the rest of the beta readers said, absolutely not. That is what really made us love the character, because we really identified with her. We understood later why things were happening the way they were happening, why she was thinking the way she was thinking, and really gave her this depth. And so then one of the beta readers I had connected with, because I said, can someone just read these chapters to see if, objectively what they think. And she picked up my chapters and she said, well, it's because she was like, you're not actually writing urban fantasy. You're almost writing like some kind of cross of like, and she gave the contemporary, fantasy mixed with like women's fiction. There's this women's fiction element of the relationships and how things are impacting these relationships, how the character is developing and changing. I decided I decided that I was going to just like lean into that, and that instead of trying to, because she said you have one of two things you can do. You can change it to, if you really want to be urban fantasy, you can change it to be urban fantasy by doing exactly what you're saying. Or she's like, there is an audience for this book. There are people that will really identify it and love it for what it is. And so I decided to lean into that. And so that's why I've been really trying hard to, when I say, when I advertise it, I say it's contemporary fantasy crossed with women's fiction. And that it's really, really about the character development and the relationships that accompany it.
And it really is. I can't even imagine your story without those first couple of chapters, because of all the underlying themes that are throughout this book. And I'm trying not to do spoilers. And I just really agree with that, because it wouldn't be the same book without those foundations. Right. I've tried to imagine it, but I think that was a good call to keep that relationship with her, establish that with her.
I think if you don't know the level of her love for her husband and her commitment to her husband, or the level of, that she's been through with her friends, like the depth of these relationships, then it would be hard to understand some of the things down the line, or all the struggling that she has, and the decisions she has to make, and why they're so traumatically impactful to her. Because if you don't know this, you could kind of be like, oh well, this person's acting kind of like a-hole, and not understand why, and then be like, oh, they could just go, it's fine.
But yeah, what an important, I guess, revelation to have through your beta readers and through the community, like you said. And I think I echo that 100 times over about how important having a community is, and finding those writing partners or those beta readers. And it takes everything to a next level. Well, Isabelle, I want to thank you so much for doing this. Let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
You can find me on TikTok and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and basically all the social media platforms, as well as on my website, isabellemarkusauthor.com. So thank you so much, Sarah, for having me.
Of course. And everybody, I will be sure to have all of the links to Isabelle's social medias in the description box below. Thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe this podcast, however you're listening, and tell all your friends about Isabelle's upcoming book. And Isabelle, cheers.
Cheers. These glasses are really
they stick. I mean, they are following you.